over a few problems that it seems to be popping up on your homework. The rational expressions R.5. So let's hit a couple that a lot of people circled. So let's take a look at number 37. So number 37 in your book. So you have xz minus xw plus, I'm going to run out of room, but that's okay, plus 2yz minus 2yw all over z squared minus w squared. And then it keeps on going, right? Then it's times by, and I'll get to that, and I'll do that one a little bit. But let's break this down first. So since we got division, we want to find factors, right? Because when we do division, we can simplify by canceling factors. So we want to factor this. Well, it looks really complicated, but if we break this down and by grouping, notice that I still have a plus sign in between there. Okay, I need to continue that plus sign because it's a group. I'm just doing groupings. I'm not going to FOIL or anything. And then I'm going to factor out my common terms, right? So there I have an x. I want to factor out an x, and what's left is a z minus w, and on this side I'm going to factor out a 2y. So I factor out 2y, I get left with a z minus w. Notice those are the same. That's what I want. Now I can look at these both and say, okay, what's the same in these terms? And then I can factor out a z minus w. So I factor that out. I get left with an x plus y. So that's the top. Now the bottom is a difference of two squares. I have z squared difference of w squared. So that is z minus w times z plus w. Oops, z plus w. There we go. Okay, so that's the left fraction. Now let's take a look at the right fraction. So I'll come back and add that in. So the right fraction is 4z plus 4w plus xz plus wx. And that's all over 16 minus x squared, which is another difference of squares. So we are going to group the top together. Again, it's a grouping, so I have to have that plus sign in between. So I take out my common terms. Let's go blue. So I take out a 4, I get left with a z plus w. I take out on the second one, I look at these two, and I take out, what, an x? So plus x. Oh, I have a z plus w. Notice that's the same, of course. That's what we want. Now we look at these two, and these two, extend the page. These two, we can factor out a z plus w. So that's out of there, and we get left with a 4 plus x. Okay, and then on bottom, it's a difference of squares again. 4 squared is 16, and x squared is x squared. So 4 minus x, and then a 4 plus x. Okay. Now I have the left and have the right, so now we're going to go ahead and combine these, and we're going to multiply them, right? All right, so after factoring them, here's what it looks like, right? Here's what it looks like. And now we can start canceling, right? As long as the same thing in the numerator as the denominator, right? So here we have the same thing in the numerator as denominator, same factors, right? And here we have factor in the denominator, factor in the numerator. Then we look anything else, yep, 4 plus x and a 4 plus x. So those are all gone. So now we can just write what's left. We have an x plus 2y over 4 minus x. All right, now here we have another one, number 59, seems to be coming up with a lot of people, so we'll do this one as well. So here we are subtracting two rational expressions, right? So we're subtracting two fractions. So again, I need to factor whenever I can, just in case I can cancel something out. Here I can't cross cancel, but I can cancel factors if they're in the same fraction on top and bottom. So let's factor this. We get x. What are the factors of negative 12 that add to positive 1? Well, that's a negative 3 and a positive 4. So if you messed up, sometimes that's just why. Just factoring was just a little mistake there. Okay, here's a difference of squares, x plus 4, x minus 4. All right, so here I'm subtracting, I'm not multiplying. Okay? All right, so here I need a common denominator. So here's a kind of a trick you can do, well, not really, but here's how to think about it. So when I have two fractions, a over b plus or minus c over d. Then how I find a common denominator is I just multiply the two bottoms. Now I have a common denominator. And then the tops I multiply by the numerator and denominator of the separate fractions. So a times d, and then plus or minus c times b. So that's the way that you can do it. So by multiplying the denominators together, you notice that I have two x plus 4s. So there I don't need to write it twice. I just need to write it once. So when I multiply my factors on bottom, I have an x minus 3, an x plus 4, an x minus 4, and then I had another x plus 4, but since I already have it in the list, I don't need to put it again. Okay, now when I multiply my denominator on the right by my numerator on the left, I don't need to multiply it by x plus 4 because I already have on this fraction an x plus 4 on bottom, so I don't need to multiply it again by it, but I do need to multiply it by this x minus 4. So 3x times x minus 4. Okay, because I already have an x minus 3 and an x plus 4 in this fraction, so I don't need to multiply the numerator by any of those, just by what I don't have. Same thing goes on the top. I already have an x plus 4 and an x minus 4. This one on the right just needs an x minus 3. So x times x minus 3. Now one of your mistakes could be, as you go along here, when I distribute the top, I'm multiplying, right? So x squared minus 12x. Here, whenever I have a negative in between, just take that negative with this x and distribute both of those in there. So then you get a negative x squared and a positive 3x. And that will probably fix a lot of your mistakes. Okay, so then to finish up, we have our common denominator, so now we can just add our tops together, right? Common like terms. So we have a 3x squared and a negative x squared, that's a 2x squared, negative 12x and a positive 3x, that's a negative 9x. So that's why in the back of the book they got negative 9x, because you have to distribute that negative. Alright, so that's how that one looks. That's finished. That's all done. I don't need to multiply or FOIL the bottom. Just leave it as factors. Alright, number 61 seems to come up too. It looks complicated, right? But here we just need to take care. We just want a fraction divided by a fraction. Here we don't have a fraction divided by a fraction. We have a binomial with one not a fraction, one a fraction. So here we want to combine these just as one fraction. Just as one fraction. Okay, so I can switch that to, I can turn 1, I need a common denominator, so I can turn 1 into x over x, right? Because what's x over x? X over x is 1. So now we have a common denominator, so now I can add my top. Same thing with bottom, I can turn 1 into x over x. Now I have a common denominator. Okay, so the tricky thing is this doesn't become on top x 1x, it becomes x plus 1. So x plus 1 over that common denominator. Then divided by x minus 1 over that common denominator. Okay, now I'm dividing by a fraction, so that means I'm multiplying my numerator by the reciprocal of the top. That means I flip that fraction. Okay, now the x's are going to cancel. Okay, because they're the same factors on top as bottom. And then we just get left with an x plus 1 over x minus 1. Okay, so 73 was another problem that seemed to be circled a lot, so we'll go ahead and attack this one. Again, there's probably different ways that you can do it. You can look up YouTube videos, you can look at Khan Academy, you can talk to different teachers. They might approach this a different way. Okay, so I'm just going to approach it one way that I think is maybe the simplest. You might find something different, so do whatever way is simplest for you. So the way that I find is simplest is just combining fractions, so I have one fraction on top and one fraction on bottom. So to do that, we'll tackle the top one at first. So like before, we have to find that common denominator, right? So we take our denominators and multiply them. So we have two factors. We have y and a y minus 1. Okay, and then we take and multiply by the cross multiply. Basically your numerator times your denominator of the other fraction. Right, so there's my common denominator. Now I'm going to take the top left here and multiply it by this one. So that means I'm on the FOIL. So I get y squared minus y plus 3y, so that's going to be a 2y, and then a 3 times negative 1 is a negative 3. Okay, then over here I want to take y and times it by 4, but since I have a negative in between, I'm just going to multiply it by negative 4. So I get negative 4y over my common denominator. And now that I have common denominators, now I can add that top. Okay, so that is y squared plus 2y, and then I have a minus 4y over here, so that's going to be a y squared minus 2y minus 3. Okay, so all over that common denominator, y times y minus 1, the quantity. Okay, so we got that top done. Now we can do the bottom, right? So here's the bottom. Again, I have that common denominator. If I multiply them, I have my factor y and my factor y plus 1, or y minus 1. And I got to do it to each fraction. So I'm going to multiply these, y squared, and then I'm going to multiply these. And since I have a positive in between, I don't need to worry about a negative here. So I just get a y minus 1, and then I'm adding these, right? I'm adding them. So there's my bottom. So my bottom is a y squared plus y minus 1 all over y times the quantity y minus 1. Okay, and now I'm dividing them, right? So then I can just flip the denominator, keep the numerator the same. And then I can multiply by flipping the denominator of the bottom here, flipping that. Okay, now I can look to cross cancel anything. Look, the denominators are the same, so they cancel. So we get y squared minus 2y minus 3 all over y squared plus y minus 1. Okay, then I can look, see if I can factor. Maybe I can factor the top, you know, y minus 3, y plus 1, but the bottom is not going to factor because it's what multiplies to negative 1 but adds to 1? Nothing. So we don't need to factor the top then, so we can just leave it like this. Alright, so that's the problems I said that everybody highlighted so far. So if I didn't do one of your problems, come see me or let me know, and then I can show you.